Hello, and welcome to the midweek episode of Views of an Outsider, the Outsider's View from January 27th. This has been a crazy fun week, people. So let's start by wrapping up the inauguration. AOC didn't go, because she doesn't celebrate rapists. Unless they're in Hamas. Or unless it's Bill Clinton. Or a Kennedy. But that's it. Other than that, I don't celebrate rapist people. I love that we can openly mock the airheads without holding back now. Switching from the hilarious and ironic to the serious. Gotta call out John Fetterman here. Now, I want to say before I do, I like John Fetterman. I like him because he's at least sincere. He does what he actually believes is right, even when it means going against his own party. And even when I disagree with him, which is about half the time, I like him because he at least acts in good faith. That being said, he went to the presidential inauguration in gym shorts with his bare legs showing and a hoodie. I'm sorry, but that's completely inappropriate. And he did this in weather that was so cold that the ceremony had to be moved inside. So this doesn't even make sense. Gym shorts and a hoodie to a presidential inauguration where everyone is in suits. Come on. That's completely inappropriate. And this wasn't a blunder that he made by mistake. They had to institute a formalized dress code in Congress because of him. So if he knows that it's not okay to go to work at the Capitol this way, he knew it wasn't okay to go to a presidential inauguration this way, and he did it anyway. I don't care if he disrespected Trump. This was disrespectful to the American people and to America's systems. Now, there are some people defending him saying, this is just who Fetterman is. Well, if I had a friend who was throwing a formal wedding, and I knew she had gone to a lot of trouble to make her wedding nice, she had paid a lot of money to make it nice, and I showed up in my bathrobe, that's me being an ass. That's not me being myself. That's me disrespecting the event and the bride and all the money that was spent on it. And this is disrespectful to the people and to the country to show up at a historical, formal event where you are a representative of the people in your gym shorts and a hoodie. It just is. I call out people whether I like them or don't like them when they're in the wrong, and he was in the wrong to do this. He was also in the wrong to vote down the Born Alive Infant Protection Act. Okay, that passed the House of Representatives and was voted down in the Senate because of certain Democrats, including him. Now, this act says that if you've got a baby, usually it would apply to a late-term abortion, and the abortion is botched, and the baby is born alive, now the baby is outside of the mother's body, so it's not her body anymore, which means it's not her choice anymore. And that baby is alive. The doctor cannot just sit there and watch it die without providing the exact same standard of care that he would to any other person or to any other infant that was in trouble. You have to try to save it to the same degree that you would any other baby, or you would be subject to prosecution for just letting the baby die the same way you would if you put it in a trash can or let the mother take it home and she just let it just starve to death over the next couple of days. That isn't allowed. And that isn't even abortion anymore. There is no excuse for saying, no, we're not going to pass a law that lets us prosecute a doctor who just sits there and does nothing to help a baby while it's dying. Like I said, that's got nothing to do with abortion. It's outside of the mother's body at this point. There's not even an argument to be made that it's her choice anymore. If she doesn't want the baby, she can put it up for adoption. If they can't save the baby, okay, you tried. But you cannot just sit there and allow a born baby to die, and there is no moral argument to the opposite side. This is wrong. And Fetterman is wrong to do this in the name of women's rights. It's got nothing to do with the woman at that point. Meanwhile, the media has pulled their first hoax of the new administration, claiming that Elon Musk did a Nazi salute. You've probably seen the video, and given that I'm assuming you're not brain dead, you already know this is bullshit. But Elon was saying in his speech, "My heart goes out to you." At which point he placed his hand over his heart and then threw his arm out to the side. Up into the air, out to the side. And they said that was a Nazi salute. Now, if you've ever seen footage of Nazis, or if you've just watched a film where there are Nazis, even if it wasn't a historical film, let's just say you've seen Indiana Jones, you know that is not the Nazi salute. The Nazi salute is arms stiff down by your side and straight up in front of you. Not hand over heart and out to the side. Down at your side, up in front of you. On your heart, out to the side. Those are nowhere near remotely the same things. But this is how desperate they are. And, it's fooling no one, so it's really not even worth mentioning other than to just show how ridiculously desperate they are. There was another incident before we move on to the news of this week. Somehow or another, a crazy woke preacher was selected to give the sermon at the prayer service after Inauguration Day. Now, I don't know who didn't do their homework, because it's not like this woman has been quiet in the past about her views. She's insanely far left and ridiculously so. She had previously condemned Trump for using a church to spread a political message when he had the police deal with rioters who had lit the church on fire. And she said that was wrong of him to use the church for politics. And then at the service, she got up in the pulpit of a church and used that pulpit to spread her own woke political message. So not only is that hypocritical, but in this case, her message is counter to everything that's taught in Scripture. Just to be full disclosure here, I'm not saying this to make any claim to superiority, but I've read the Bible cover to cover at least a half a dozen times. Parts of it I've studied in its original Greek and Hebrew. I've memorized huge portions of it during my childhood and hand-copied at least 10 books by hand. So I know what's in there. And I say that just to lend credibility to what I'm about to say. So this pastor claims, by virtue of being a pastor, that she believes what is taught in Scripture. And then she took the Lord's name in vain by attaching his credibility to her personal political beliefs. That is what is forbidden in the commandment not to take the Lord's name in vain. You are not supposed to lower God's reputation and use it trivially to support your own personal stuff. What God said is what God said. What you believe is what you believe, and those are two separate categories. And you're not supposed to abuse that by trying to attach God's authority to your personal politics. So she publicly broke that commandment. And she encourages people to worship an idol of her own creation. I don't know what she believes, but it's not Christianity. Okay, Christianity is a specific thing. Christianity is a belief in the teachings of the Bible. Now, you can come up with your own belief system and slap the name of Christianity onto it, even though it has nothing in common with Christianity. And you can create a God of your own imagination that does and says what you want him to and call that Jesus, but that is not Christianity. Okay, that is what the Bible calls being an antichrist. An antichrist is not someone who opposes Christianity. It's someone who produces a counterfeit. This woman is one such person. She is the type of person that Christ repeatedly condemned for being spiritual hypocrites who were leading those who followed them away from God because their father is Satan. His words, not mine. And this is what one such woman, and I'm calling her out without mincing any words about it. In her political sermon, which was supposed to be a biblical sermon, she begged Trump to have mercy on the trans children who are in fear of their lives. I have nothing but sympathy for trans children, but there's no reason for them to be in fear of their lives. No one wants to harm them. No one. The only people that are making them afraid are liars in wolves in sheep's clothing, like this minister who is convincing them that people want to harm them, which is not true. I'm sorry that these children are afraid, and I don't doubt that they are. And fear is an awful state to be in. But children are often afraid of monsters under the bed, and that doesn't mean there actually is a monster under the bed. Adults should calm the fears of children by redirecting them to reality, not by validating their fantasies, which only causes them to be more afraid. She also asked Trump to have mercy on the illegal immigrants who have broken the law in order to enter our country, citing the Scripture's commandment to be kind to the stranger. The Bible does say that. But the Bible is very clear about the difference between governments and individuals. And they don't operate on the same rule structure. Individuals are supposed to be kind to the stranger. The government is clearly ordered to maintain the laws of the land, provide justice, and not to carry the sword for nothing. And in that environment where the government does its job to enforce the laws and protect the people, obviously the strangers will be legal immigrants because the criminals will have already been handled by the government. And yes, when it comes to legal immigrants among you, you are supposed to be kind to the stranger. And I know of no one who objects to that. You are following the example of your father, Satan, who also loved to take Scripture and twist it into lies in order to deceive people. And there is a very special circle of hell reserved for people who go out of their way to deceive others onto the wrong path. I would encourage you to turn away from that while there is still time, because the destination you are heading to is awful beyond your worst comprehension, and you will pay in full for every lie you told and every soul you deceived through those lies. That's all I have to say. Now let's get into the fun of this week. Okay, the White House website splashed the words "America is back" across its pages before the inauguration speech was even over, and apparently they meant it. So let's get into what happened this week, starting with the flag. Trump's State Department issued guidelines that ordered U.S. embassies to fly only the American flag and not to fly any activist flags, including the Pride flag or Black Lives Matter's flag, both of which they have been flying over government buildings under Biden. I applaud this. And the reason I applaud this is because we are not a nation just for certain groups. We are a united country for all Americans, and our government is for all of us, and that is represented by the Stars and Stripes. Our government should not hold up, prioritize, or represent certain groups above other ones. This is a return to staying in your lane, and I applaud it. As regards the fires in LA, Trump signed an order aimed at, quote, putting people over fish in California. He ordered federal agencies to work on routing more water from Northern California to the southern areas that have been damaged by the fires, and to stop prioritizing the Delta smelt fish above people, which is the correct hierarchy of priorities. These environmental efforts do more harm than good the way California does them. A California study showed that the smoke from just 2 of the fires in 2020 wiped out 18 years worth of environmental efforts in reducing carbon across the entire state of California. So, by refusing to clear away dead brush, by refusing to build dams and reservoirs to keep water, by prioritizing the Delta smelt fish, which is going extinct despite your best efforts, you've caused another massive fire, which has undone a lot more of your environmental efforts. It does not make sense to approach things this way. Trump also issued orders recognizing North Carolina's Lumbee tribe, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, and promoting more beautiful civic architecture, which would be nice. On Friday, which was only his 5th whirlwind day in office, Trump turned his attention to our disaster zones by flying to North Carolina to view the hurricane damage and then to California to survey the wildfire damage. The first executive orders signed by Trump included rescinding 78 of Biden's executive orders. One of these killed Lyndon Johnson's executive order requiring affirmative action in federal hiring. The original executive order not only forbade discrimination, which is good, it also required affirmative action, i.e. reverse discrimination, which is bad. And that's why it has now been struck down. In one order, he scrapped all government DEI programs and put their staff on leave. He also directed the Federal Aviation Administration to stop DEI hiring practices, noting that the FAA is responsible for the safety of nearly 3 million airline passengers every day, and their safety needs to come first by hiring people based on their qualifications, which is obviously going to include diverse groups, but they should not be hired based on those diverse classifications. They should be hired based on their ability to do the job. This is common sense when life and death is on the line. On Wednesday at 5 p.m., all federal DEI programs closed and went offline. Some DEI executives are changing their job titles in order to disguise themselves, but it doesn't appear that this strategy is going to save them, as the government is signaling that it is going to be launching wide-scale investigations to root these practices out of American life. Trump also granted pardons to nearly 1,600 people charged in connection with January 6th and the riot that happened at the Capitol. Most of the defendants received full pardons, while 14 members of the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers, most of whom were convicted for seditious conspiracy, got their sentences commuted. The Justice Department was also directed to dismiss any pending indictments related to the riot. Now, most of these people didn't know what was going to happen and didn't participate when it did. So they shouldn't have been in jail, and I agree with those pardons. However, a few of these people did commit crimes, did participate in the violence, and they shouldn't have been pardoned. However, I would point out that they have already served 3 years for their participation in this riot. And when I compare that to Biden commuting the sentences of all but 3, commuting the sentences of 37 of the worst and most violent criminals in the country, people so bad that they were on federal death row, including a guy who killed 2 FBI agents and people who cut the throats of children, compared to a riot at the Capitol that I wholeheartedly disapprove of, but where no one was killed besides one of the rioters. Didn't like January 6th, still don't, but I can see, and objectively, that is small potatoes by comparison. Biden also pardoned Fauci, who did illegal gain-of-function research that caused a worldwide pandemic that killed a lot of people. He repeatedly and blatantly lied to Congress on the record, and that can be proved. He smeared his opponents in the medical field and the scientific community in order to increase his own power during the pandemic, etc. So, yeah, in light of all of that, I think Trump should have been a little bit more selective, but compared to the blatant miscarriages of justice that have just happened, if you expect me to get all riled up about this, you're going to be disappointed. Now, in my world, none of those things would have happened. The pardons that Biden issued wouldn't have been allowed, and some of these pardons for January 6th participants wouldn't have been allowed either. But if you're not willing to condemn Biden's pardons, then don't come to me looking for January 6th condemnation. Yeah, can't have double standards. I don't play that game. And by the way, preemptive pardons, like the ones given to Fauci, need to be banned. You can't pardon someone for a crime that they haven't even been accused of. That's ridiculous, and it needs to be stopped right here, right now, at the beginning of abuses like this. Trump also pardoned 23 pro-life activists who were wrongly targeted and imprisoned for beliefs that they have the right to have. Even if you disagree with them, even if you are pro-choice and you completely disagree with the pro-lifers, they have the right to believe what they believe. And they have the right to protest about their beliefs as long as they are peaceful about it and not accosting anyone entering an abortion clinic or blocking the entrance, etc., which these people were not. They're on video. They were sitting there singing hymns. To put someone in federal prison for singing hymns in public at a place that you would prefer they didn't giving some of them sentences that are longer than people get for rape in many cases, is insane. So yes, these people should have been pardoned. For example, one of these people was a woman in her 70s who is a mother of 6, 4 of which were adopted, who is wheelchair bound and in poor health, and who was sentenced to over 2 years in prison for sitting in her wheelchair singing hymns at an abortion clinic. Another is a mother of a 2-year-old. We're talking about a Holocaust victim. I mean, this is insane. This is insane and a blatant miscarriage of justice. The DOJ who prosecuted these people displayed their selective devotion to justice in full view when they didn't choose to prosecute the actual attacks that were committed against pro-life charities. There were 170 of these attacks against pro-life pregnancy centers and churches, including 86 Catholic churches and 74 pregnancy resource centers, who were targeted in the wake of the Dobbs decision. Some of these places received threats saying, quote, "If abortions aren't safe, neither are you." Okay, so let me get this straight. If you might not be able to kill your baby for every reason, and it might be limited to select circumstances, and that might also extend to limiting the point in your pregnancy that you can do this, that if you want to kill your baby for any reason besides those, you need to do it before a certain point. So you can't kill your baby for every reason under the sun at any stage during the 9 months. In some states, where in other states you still can do that. You're going to make sure that those who choose to keep their baby can't receive the resources they need to support them in their choice. I thought you were pro-choice. Why are you taking their choice away from them? That's not being pro-choice. That's just being pro-death. To say, if abortions don't work exactly like we want them to in every single place, then we're going to take away even more choices from women. That's not pro-choice, that's pro-death and pro-tyranny. And the people who committed attacks against places that help pregnant women in crisis, they just don't do abortions, but they offer women who want to keep their babies the resources that allow them to do that. And they weren't just protesting outside these places. They attacked them, and they got no jail time. The DOJ did not charge almost all of them with anything. This is a clip of Paul Vaughn, who was one of the pro-life protesters who was pardoned. He had been at a protest outside of an abortion clinic where he was completely peaceful, and the next day his home was raided as though he was Osama bin Laden. Here's what he had to say about what he experienced that day, so that you understand the ridiculous scale of the persecutions that were being conducted by using our justice system as though it was a personal toy, making it into the weapon of activists.
I'd like to speak to you about the DOJ's Project 2022 that happened October 5th at 7 a.m. in the morning when my house was assaulted, my wife and children were terrorized, and I was kidnapped at gunpoint by 4 armed men. I had just sent 3 of my children to the car so I could take them to school when the house began to shake from a loud banging near the front door. I heard men shouting on my porch, "Open up, FBI!" The banging continued. As I looked out a side window to check the location of my children, I saw 2 unmarked SUVs with lights flashing, but I did not see my children. The banging continued, and I heard more shouting. I opened the curtains on the front door to find 3 men with guns trained on the door. I asked who they were looking for, and they replied, "We're here for you." They did not identify me or provide identification for themselves. As I believed there was an imminent threat to the safety of my wife and 7 children who were home that day, I determined to surrender myself to them, hoping that they were legitimate law enforcement. I opened the door and stepped out onto the porch, staring down the barrels of both a pistol and an automatic weapon pointed at my head.
And this is a clip of the 70-year-old wheelchair-bound woman right after she was convicted.
Paulette, we've all just come out of your sentencing hearing here in D.C. What would you like to tell our LifeSite News readers about what just happened there?
There was a great injustice with the entire case, and the worst part of it was that they portrayed us as violent, something that people in the pro-life movement would never be. We would never be violent. We absolutely abhor that. We especially abhor the violence that's put upon the young babies that are being torn limb for limb. I mean, that is the ultimate violence, and we certainly wouldn't partake in any violence.
The prosecutor and the judge went out of their way to keep using that term violent, right? And you look like a violent person.
They really did. And it was based on the lies that the staff told.
So this is the kind of people who were pardoned, and I wholeheartedly support that. And I want to see guardrails put in place that does not allow each party as it comes into office to turn the justice system, which is supposed to be trustworthy and blind, into a political toy that they use to bash whoever they happen to disagree with. That is not okay. That is an abuse of power, and it needs to be remembered, it needs to be punished, and it needs to be rooted out and put an end to. These pardons are a good first step. In the same vein, Trump also restored the Mexico City rule, which prohibits federal funding to any overseas non-governmental organizations that perform or promote abortions. Now, let me be clear. Taxpayers shouldn't be forced to fund any non-governmental organization just because that organization happens to align with a politician's personal political beliefs. Our tax dollars are not your piggy bank. Those tax dollars are meant for our needs, the people's needs. And it's not your money. You are merely authorized to spend it on us, not on your personal wish lists. That applies to both sides of the aisle. So taxpayers shouldn't be paying for any NGOs, much less NGOs in other countries that aren't even ours. Much less to fund abortions for people who aren't our responsibility in countries that aren't any of our business. Give me a break. This is how we're $36 trillion in debt. He also restored the Hyde Amendment, which prevents taxpayers from being forced to pay for most abortions. I also agree with this. You are perfectly free to argue your body, your choice. That's an open debate that I'm not getting into today. But an extension of your body, your choice means your bill. It's your body that you're making a choice about, a choice which you need to pay for, not come into my pockets and say that I have to pay for the choice you are making to your body. The new administration also made a statement strongly supporting the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act that we mentioned earlier, which had passed through the House but was blocked in the Senate this week. And he shut down the Biden administration's pro-abortion government website. The government should not be campaigning for more abortions. Even if you're a pro-choice person who believes that abortion should be allowed, the government shouldn't be campaigning as though it's a good thing. There was a day and time when Democrats thought that abortions were sad. They needed to be allowed under certain circumstances, but they needed to be safe and rare, not celebrated, encouraged, and as many of them as we can talk people into doing. That kind of evangelizing is not the government's job. The government is not a church meant to spread ideas and personal philosophies. It's meant to do its job, and only its job. Which brings us to the border, which is one thing that is the government's job. Remain in Mexico is back in place as of January 21st. The CBP One app has been shut down. The barriers on the border went back up, and Trump did issue an executive order that revoked birthright citizenship, but that will have to play out in court. The 14th Amendment concerning birthright citizenship reads, and I quote, "All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and the states wherein they reside." End quote. This was meant to give citizenship to former slaves, not to tourists who get an unexpected layover in our country, or to an illegal alien who criminally broke into our country and decided to have an anchor baby. Now, if this executive order survives the court process, it obviously won't be retroactive, nor should it be. You can't go back and change the rules on people who were abiding by the rules when the rules were different. It would change things going forward, and it is and already has been challenged, which will force the Supreme Court to finally rule on this issue, which is long overdue. We are literally the only country in the world that does this. It's insanity, and hopefully it's now about to end. That part talking about born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof is an important addition. Slaves were not subject to their country in Africa, where their ancestors came from. They were not citizens of that country and subject to a different jurisdiction. They were here and had been denied citizenship because of their absolutely abhorrent condition as slaves. This was meant to remove that for them. And that's why it's worded the way it is. If you are here illegally, or even if you're a tourist that's here legally and you're passing through, you are not subject to the United States. You are a citizen of a foreign nation and subject to its jurisdiction. So, hopefully the Supreme Court will take this up and put an end to this nonsense. Like I said, we are the only country in the world that does this, and it's ludicrous. Congress also passed the Lake and Riley Act, which says that illegal immigrants who commit any crime, in addition to the one of entering the country illegally, including minor crimes like shoplifting, etc., will be deported. This law passed 64 to 35. Even the Dems have mostly flipped on this issue. Meanwhile, the Department of Homeland Security reinstated the term illegal alien. We do not need to muddy the waters with nice terms for everything. They are not undocumented immigrants. They are illegal aliens, because they are aliens to this country who did not come as immigrants, but who immigrated in a process that was illegal. It's time to start using accurate terminology instead of deliberately trying to mask things by coming up with new terms that everyone is required to use every 5 minutes. The president declared a national emergency at the southern border, deploying thousands of troops there in order to help Border Patrol get the border back under control and out of the hands of the cartels who currently run it. Yes, troops are on the way to secure the border. Yes! Finally! Sanity! Trump also ordered construction to finish the border wall, and he ordered Homeland Security to remove illegal immigrants and go after the drug cartels, which he has now designated as foreign terrorist groups. Rightly so, considering that they killed untold amounts of Americans through fentanyl. These are human traffickers. These are people who sex traffic innocent children. These are people who kill migrants, rape the women who enter the country through them. These are absolutely people who should be treated as terrorists, and this official designation allows us to deal with them accordingly. The executive orders also blocked all illegal entries, including asylum seekers and refugees. They have to remain in Mexico while we check out their story. You are not allowed to just claim that you are a refugee and disappear into our country and live off the system for several years before you get a court date that you won't show up for. No. If you are truly an asylum seeker, then you stay in Mexico while we check your story out, and then you'll be allowed in. It, as I said, shut down the CBP One app that was allowing so much abuse, and beefed up visa screening, and, as I said, most importantly, has made the first step toward ending birthright citizenship for children of non-citizens. That one is going to take some time because it's going to require going through the court system and either being ended or having to get through the legal challenges to it. Trump also threatened to prosecute officials and to strip funding from sanctuary cities and states that refuse to cooperate with his deportations, which have already begun. Everyone out there needs to be clear. It is a felony to hide an illegal alien from the government. It is a crime to impede an ICE officer. You've been warned. Civil disobedience means that you take your lumps. When MLK committed civil disobedience, he went to jail for it. He was willing to do this because going to jail, being attacked by dogs, being sprayed with fire hoses, all this, shone a light on an ugly law that needed to be changed. And by taking his lumps, he was able to change people's minds. That's what civil disobedience is. Civil disobedience is not, I break the law and there is no consequences. It is, I break the law knowing there will be consequences, which I accept in the hopes of changing that law. So commit your acts of civil disobedience with that in mind, because you're going to be prosecuted for breaking them. And all the polls show that the public is not on your side in changing this law, so you may actually stay in jail. Less than 48 hours after Trump was sworn in, ICE had already arrested more than 460 illegal migrants, and they have begun deporting MS-13 and other dangerous gang members. This is a clip of a man who has committed multiple crimes and is being deported, although he's nowhere near as dangerous as, say, an MS-13 gang member. Here's what he had to say. This man has 17 criminal convictions. He was arrested in Boston. He is an illegal immigrant from Haiti. Here is what he had to say.
I'm not not going back to Haiti.
One of those threats is this illegal alien from Haiti. ICE says he's a gang member with 17 criminal convictions in recent years.
Trump, you feel me? Yo, Biden forever, bro. Thank Obama for everything that he did for me, bro.
Well, we will be sure to pass on your thanks to Biden and Obama for allowing you to be in our country illegally and victimize our people with your many crimes. And as far as your declaration that you aren't going back to Haiti, I didn't say you had to go home, but you have to get the hell out of here. Pope Francis criticized the deportations. Full disclosure, I'm not Catholic, so his opinion doesn't count any more than anyone else's with me. I respected and admired Pope John Paul. I have no respect and I very much dislike Pope Francis, which is luckily my prerogative as a Protestant. But even if I was Catholic, this is none of his business. Your lane is theology, my dude. And even if I was a Catholic, you're only theoretically infallible under certain extremely limited conditions. So why should I care what you think? Stop overstepping and work on getting your own house in order. Okay? Trump has ended gender ideology. This is an 80-20 issue. America has made up its mind, and Democrats continue to beat this drum to their own destruction. Men are now legally human beings who produce the small reproductive cell, i.e. sperm. Women are now legally human beings who produce the large reproductive cell, i.e. the egg. We're done. With that definition in mind, this order reverses the previous administration's policies that allowed people to change their gender on their passports. They now have to list their biological sex, not their gender identity. You can identify however you want to, but that's not what we're asking you. It also bans federal funds from promoting gender ideology in places like schools, or paying for medical gender transitions for prison inmates, or any other gender ideology agendas. This act protects women and girls from trans-identifying men by banning them from women's prisons, rape shelters, and other intimate spaces. I've spoken on this issue before. Y'all know where I stand on it, so okay. If the government is in a place now where we have to declare that 1 + 1 is 2, so be it, we will. But as someone who has been in abusive situations, women should be able to go to an abuse shelter and know that there will not be men there. Whether that's men in pants or men in dresses, doesn't make a difference. They should be able to have a place where they know they're safe. You can identify however you want. I'm not interested in controlling your life, but your problems are your problems, just like my problems are my problems, and you don't have the right to demand that everyone out there reorder society in order to have things arranged according to your preferences just because you have some problems. No one does. I don't as a disabled person. You don't as someone with gender dysphoria. I don't want to see you discriminated against or mistreated. But you can't come into women's spaces. The end. We're done because women count too. Doge was officially created. I love it. All federal workers now have to show up for work in person. No more of this 94% of government employees working from home where they can use mouse wigglers or whatever else. You want to work for the government? You have to come to work. You want a job where you can work from home? Those exist, but they're not government jobs. Trump has been able to utter his favorite words, "You're fired," to more than 1,000 presidential appointees who were part of the previous administration who are, quote, not aligned with our vision to make America great again. This included retired Army General Mark Milley, who was fired from the National Infrastructure Advisory Council. Several other executive orders took aim at the federal bureaucracy and created a federal hiring freeze, with exceptions for areas like the military. More orders established federal hiring based on merit, as discussed earlier with the death of DEI. The aim now is to restore accountability from the federal workers who often end up influencing policy by setting standards and holding them to them. The free ride is over. Trump also revoked taxpayer-funded security details for former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, Trump's former National Security Advisor John Bolton, and Anthony Fauci, who was the face of Trump's White House Pandemic Task Force, as well as in charge under Biden. No more of my money for you, Fauci. You're on your own, my dude. Consider yourself lucky that you aren't in jail, thanks to Biden's preemptive pardon. Pay for your security yourself. TikTok. In a highly controversial, very fueled issue, the president suspended the TikTok ban and expressed hopes of being able to strike a deal with TikTok's parent company. He created a 75-day extension which delays the ban from going into effect, which is good if he's able to achieve a deal and get the company to sell. That would be great. This is a bad move if China is allowed to retain control in the end. That cannot be allowed. Cabinet appointment confirmations. We've been covering these. We've got a little bit of update for that. Pete Hegseth's former sister-in-law signed an affidavit saying that he was abusive to his second wife and behaved dangerously, which would actually count for something with me if the wife herself hadn't said that the statement was inaccurate, that her marriage wasn't abusive, and that she wants to be left alone and not involved, and is getting a lawyer. Meanwhile, Trump's cabinet confirmations are working their way through the Senate. The Secretary of State, Mark Rubio, was the first to be confirmed on Tuesday, and Pete Hegseth was confirmed as the Defense Secretary Friday evening, with Vance casting the tie-breaking vote. We won, you lost, we're done. Some more good news. Trump made good on his promise by signing an order to declassify all the documents for JFK, RFK, and MLK. He gave the pen that he used to sign this order to RFK Jr., who is understandably thrilled with this order. This order will release the remaining 3,000 confidential JFK documents and 30,000 documents that have been released already but were edited. According to this order, they have 45 days to provide full transparency to the people, which is always a good thing. We'll see what they have to say. Another order revoked the security clearance of 51 former intelligence officials who signed a letter discrediting the Hunter Biden laptop story as Russian disinformation. If you are part of the intelligence community and you blatantly lie to the people and sign your name to a document designed to lie to the people, then yeah, you shouldn't have security clearance and have access to our state secrets because you're not trustworthy. Liars generally aren't. International affairs. Trump directed the Secretary of Interior to officially restore the name Mount McKinley to the country's highest peak after the Obama administration changed it to the native Alaskan name Mount Denali in 2015. So it was Mount McKinley up till 2015. It's been changed for 10 years. Now it's going back. He also directed the Secretary of Interior to rename the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America, which makes more sense because it's not owned by Mexico. There's North America and there's South America, and the Gulf sits in the middle of it, belonging to both Americas. So the Gulf of America actually makes more sense than attributing it to one country. But this is causing some international hissy fits. So how about this? You call the Gulf, and we'll call the Gulf, and we'll see who it comes to. Trump also withdrew from the World Health Organization, citing its mishandling of the pandemic, which is certainly true. They will receive no further funding from the United States of America. Trump also made it clear that any foreign aid that doesn't align with America's purposes won't be renewed. He means you, UNRWA. And I am grinning ear to ear right now. You don't get to use the UN to participate in atrocities like October the 7th. You don't get to behead babies and claim you're part of UN world peace agendas. You don't get to indoctrinate Palestinian kindergartners with the idea that their life is there so that they can die as a teenager, as a suicide bomber, in order to take a few Israelis with them. You're about to be defunded, my friend. You get no more of my money. He also killed the sanctions on Jews living in Judea and Samaria, which is the historical name for the West Bank. I applaud both of these moves. Hip, hip, hooray! Hip, hip, hooray! Hip, hip, hooray! Israel is our ally. End of story. Palestinians need to start making better choices for their children. Why do I care more about your dead children than you do? Stop electing terrorists that you know are going to get you involved in wars where your children are going to die. Just because you care less about your children dying than you do about killing the Jews whom you hate. We're not going to let you wipe them off the face of the earth. That's the way it is. Start coming to the table to work out peace settlements. That's the way it is. If Hamas had taken you over violently, I would have more sympathy for you, but you elected them, and you still support them according to every poll by 70% of your population. So, when are you going to start caring about your dead children? This is Elise Stefanik, who is going through confirmation hearings to become America's ambassador to the UN, saying as much.
We should never tolerate any U.S. taxpayer funds going towards terrorism. As in my question with the ranking member, Shaheen, I was one of the members that voted to defund UNRWA. I was one of the leaders in standing for that important appropriations vote, which there is a bipartisan consensus on, with significant members, Republicans, as well as some Democrats who voted to defund it. I think we can look to organizations within the UN system, such as UNHCR, such as the World Food Program, working with USAID, which are proven organizations. They still need, reform efforts and modernization, but don't have the terrorist ties that UNRWA had, particularly that were exposed during the October 7th Hamas attack against Israel, whether it was Hamas's leader Sinwar carrying an UNRWA teacher's passport, or whether it was the UNRWA office above a Hamas data center, or individuals within UNRWA who participated in the terrorist attack against Israel on October 7th. So that I fully support the president's commitment to defunding, and I'm proud to have voted for that in the Congress.
As she said, there are other organizations that do not participate in terrorism or fund it, that we can use to help Palestinian civilians. And in the interest of world peace, I'm perfectly willing to help Palestinians get on their feet on the condition that they stop using the money that I give them out of my pocket to build terror tunnels and finance lives of luxury in Qatar for their terrorist leaders, and ripping up their sewers to make rocket launchers, and causing wars where thousands of their own people die. If you want to use it for your children, for education, for hospitals, for schools, for infrastructure, great. Let's get this on track. If you don't, that is the only offer on the table. You can take it or you can leave it. We're not funding your terrorism anymore. Speaking of terrorism, a terrorist got into Israel, where he went on a stabbing spree and stabbed 4 people in Tel Aviv. He only got into Israel through us, because he had been let into the USA, because we have not been vetting people. Now, vetting people is back with a vengeance. And these people will no longer have access to our country or to our allies through us. Also, the Houthis have been reclassified as a terrorist organization. And these flies on the backside of the world aren't going to be allowed to blow up shipping in the Red Sea anymore and cost us all more money in order to live. Enough of this baloney. Trump also demanded that NATO nations increase their contributions to their own defense, which is correct. I'm not for abandoning NATO, but Americans pay for the United States military. We cannot also, and will not also, fund other nations' defense if they're not willing to put a proportional amount of skin into the game towards their own responsibilities. So step up, and we can work together, or you can fund your defense 100% yourself. Those are the 2 options on the table. Trump also declared a national energy emergency. He withdrew from the Paris Climate Agreement, revoking any related financial commitments. He directed the deregulation of domestic energy production, especially in Alaska. He paused all new federal leasing and permits for wind farms, which are ineffective, ugly, are killing our magnificent birds of prey in devastating numbers, and producing disproportionate amounts of litter for landfills, considering how quickly they rust and have to be replaced. I'm all for environmentalism when it's practical and when the benefits are more than the drawbacks, but I'm not interested in doing stuff just so we can say we're doing something, even when it's no better than what we were doing before, and all things considered, actually worse. He eliminated the electric vehicle mandate. You will still be able to buy electric cars, obviously. You just have a choice. It's not going to be mandated that all companies have to go electric. He announced plans to get rid of regulations on products like light bulbs, water heaters, and washing machines. Another order pauses assistance for foreign countries for 90 days until they are reviewed. He issued an America First trade policy that includes exploring the idea of building an external revenue service to work alongside the internal revenue service in order to collect revenue from foreign trade, instead of preying exclusively on the American people who already donate a lot to foreign countries, which I'm not completely against. I'm not an isolationist. There are instances where we need to be involved, but fixing every problem in the world is not our job, and it shouldn't come out of our wallet. On Thursday, Trump spoke virtually at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, where he accused the CEO of the Bank of America to his face of debanking conservatives, saying, quote, "What you're doing is wrong." There have been abuses of power when it comes to debanking, and if the CEO of the Bank of America has been doing this, he deserved to be called out. Once again, these systems need to quit being weaponized against people that you disagree with. People are allowed to disagree with you, whether it's over abortion, whether it's over the environment, whether it's over gender stuff, whatever it is. You are not allowed to just say, "I don't like you, and therefore I'm going to destroy your life." People have the right to disagree with you, whether you're on the right or the left. He spoke with several foreign leaders, including the Danish Prime Minister, where they talked about Greenland. He also talked to the President of El Salvador about illegal immigration. And his first call was to the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, who says that he wants to join the Abraham Accords, which would be a massive step in the right direction toward achieving peace in the Middle East. He also wants to invest $600 billion in the United States over the next 4 years. The administration said that it has already acquired a total of $1 trillion in new investments for our country, and they've only been in office a week. So that's what went down. And this is just week one, baby. Okay, I mean, I know this is the honeymoon period and that this pace can't last. We have to be realistic. Congress will move like a snail and get deadlocked every 5 minutes, causing us to have to compromise and take a lot of shit in the agreements, pass a lot of trash in order to get things done. But this is freaking awesome so far. All right, 3 quick stories to wrap up. I have to play this clip of Pierre Poilievre because I love this guy. He wasn't eating an apple in this one, but it was still really good. Let's listen.
First thing on the job, President Trump signed an executive order, the U.S. government only recognizing 2 genders, male, female. They're unchangeable. If elected as prime minister, is that something that you're going to kind of walk in line with, or what are your feelings on that executive order?
Well, I don't know. Do you have any other genders that you'd like to name?
Me personally?
Yes.
I'm just asking more so if you're in line with what he is saying. Do you agree with what he's saying? Is that something that you would be lockstep with if elected as prime minister?
Well, I'm not aware of any other genders than men and women. I mean, if you have any other that you want me to consider, you're welcome to tell me right now.
Well, there's personally, I am a man. I am as people who say cis man. There are people there who, they say they're gender neutral. Well, you're a man, yes. There are people there who say they're gender neutral. Yeah, they say they're gender neutral. They're a trans person. Is that something that you would recognize here? Whereas in the States, at least with their U.S. government, the way they're seeing it, there's only 2.
I'm only aware of 2, but I mean, if you come up with another list, then you're welcome to do that. But I'm aware of 2, and as far as I'm concerned, we should have a government that just minds its own damn business and leaves people alone.
Yep. Makes sense to me. What business is it of the government's to recognize or not recognize how someone feels about themselves? Biologically, there are 2 sexes, male and female. And those have now been defined so that we can stop all this nonsense. And you can see yourself however you want to see yourself. No one's getting in your head and telling you you are not allowed to think of yourself the way you want to. Think of yourself however you want to. It's not my business. But the government's job isn't to affirm you or pat you on the head or make you feel good. The government's job is to run the government. So, like you said, they need to mind their own business. I love this guy. I don't think Pierre Poilievre's heart rate has ever broken 40 in his entire life. The representative from Tennessee hurt Jim Acosta's feelings by pointing out to him on CNN that they are no longer respected, trusted, or watched. Fact check, true. Here's what that sounded like. It was fun. Listen.
I was at the White House covering the first Trump administration when they had rioting outside of the White House. I mean, that was covered on CNN. What you're saying, this is not Fox, Congressman. You can't just spin a tail and pull the wool over people's eyes. Yeah. This is CNN. This is the news. We're asking you to come on and tell the truth.
And that's why more people are watching the Cartoon Network SpongeBob reruns right now, Jim. Look, I left the White House during a riot. My life was threatened. My life has been threatened within the last few weeks. Yet there's no coverage of that. And you all continue this narrative attacking Trump. You just can't stand the fact that he won and that America spoke.
Congressman,
and that your view is very diminished.
Yeah, you're only the news if people trust you. And viewership is way down, my dude. Because you've blown that trust. Because just like you accused Fox News of doing, and sometimes they do this, but you also spin your own narrative and have been caught in a lot of blatant lies, which is why people are not listening to you anymore. I would remind everyone of, was it Jon Stewart? I believe it was Jon Stewart, who, it was one of the late night hosts, whose audience is far from right-wing, and when he was interviewing another CNN anchor, claiming that we all know that, CNN just reports the facts without any bias, the entire audience burst out laughing. And they weren't laughing maliciously. They weren't laughing to be sarcastic. They were a left-wing audience. And they burst out laughing because that's so blatantly untrue. They thought he was making a joke. And when the CNN anchor got in a huff and was like, was that supposed to be a laugh line? He kind of nervously admitted, well, it wasn't supposed to be, but I guess it was. Because, yeah, it is a laugh. CNN's unbiased reporting of the news is a claim that is an actual joke in mainstream America. You did that, not us. You broke trust. So maybe you need to look in the mirror and see about how you can fix that, instead of just declaring, we are the news, and what we say is the truth, and the peasants will listen to us. Because if you want to be a child, I can be a child too. Make me. And our last story. Speaking of libs who don't get it. Hollywood. Okay, so help us, but Oscar season is upon us. And a movie called Amelia Perez was nominated for so many awards that it almost broke the record. The dude who is playing a guy who is transgender is nominated for the Best Actress category. This movie got 2 more nominations than The Godfather, which is the greatest movie ever made. If it had gotten 1 more nomination, it would have tied for the record. As I said, one of these nominations was the Best Actress category, which is going to be won by this man, meaning that both the Best Actor category and the Best Actress category are going to be won by men this year. But at least this time, your luxury beliefs are affecting you instead of me. So if the actresses are good with this, well, at least for once, it's them that's actually having to deal with their beliefs. I mean, I'm just curious, like, if you want to do this, if you want to just have men and women compete against each other for best performance, like best leading performance, best supporting performance, why not just get rid of the gender categories? Why not just say, hey, there's one award, best performance for a lead, best performance for supporting, and call it quits? Why are we still playing this game of an actress category and an actor category if that's going to be meaningless? I mean, I'm just asking. You do what you want to do. I mean, I don't care. I don't watch the Oscars. I haven't for years. No one has for years. But, I mean, if that's what you want to do, do it. I just, like, it doesn't make sense. Why not just erase the two categories? The Oscars also nominated an anti-Semitic piece of propaganda trash, in the best documentary category. But before I wrap on this story, I just have to say, I watched 20 minutes worth of clips of this movie, Amelia Perez, that has been showered with nominations. And that 20 minutes worth made me want to go on a drinking binge for the first time in my entire life. Just to get that all out of my head. This movie is insane. The premise of the movie is the true story of a drug cartel leader who murders people, traffics people, does all the most horrible things anyone can do, and then later in life decides that he is actually a woman and has trans surgeries, which not only change him from male to female, but also magically change him from a bad person to a good person. Because apparently, even if you murder and traffic people and sell drugs and commit every atrocity on earth, if you're trans, that all magically disappears and you become a saint. He is actually made a saint at the end of this movie. And the people in Mexico hate this movie because it was written and made by French people according to their idea of what Mexico is and what this story is. And the Mexican people were actually the primary victims of this man who committed atrocities among them. So they're not really thrilled with this. But the movie is the narrative that Hollywood likes, so it must be showered. It is a musical. Okay, now there are musicals I really like. I have never in my life heard music this bad. It has no melody, and the lyrics are so bad that you would think they were written by people who were deliberately trying to mock this whole idea. Now, I hesitate to inflict this on the rest of the world, having suffered through clips myself. But just so you don't think I'm exaggerating, I'm going to play part, and only part, of the hit song from this movie, so that you can see how bad the music and lyrics actually are, and know that I am not in any way, shape, or form making this movie sound worse than it is. Okay, I cannot believe I am listening to this for the second time, but here you go.
Hello, very nice to meet you. I'd like to know about sex change operation.
I see. Man to woman, or woman to man.
Man to woman.
From penis to vagina. Is it for you?
For me?
What would you like to know about it, Mother?
I want to know it all. What is the protocol? The techniques and the risks. How many operations? How much time do you need?
Mammoplasty.
Yes.
Vaginoplasty.
Yes.
Rhinoplasty.
Yes.
Laryngoplasty.
Yes.
Mammoplasty.
Yes.
Vaginoplasty.
Yes.
Rhinoplasty.
Yes.
Laryngoplasty.
Yes.
Control laryngoplasty.
What is that?
Adam's apple reduction.
Yes, 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 yes. Yes.
Okay, that's all I can bear. As you heard, there is no melody to that. And the lyrics are insane. That is not music. I don't know what that is. But it's insane. And even trans activists are saying, like, this movie is nuts. And yet, Hollywood is like, no, the world will love it. We have declared it to be so, and it is so. Yeah. And just so you don't think I'm cherry picking here. Another song in this movie is where the trans guy's little boy, who doesn't know this is his father, because he thinks it's a woman, he's telling this person that they smell like his father. And it's supposed to be a touching moment. And then the little boy bursts into song where he describes the long list of things that his father smells like. Just like the song I listed for you is describing a list of all the surgical procedures that you go through in trans surgery. This is the movie that got more nominations than The Godfather and was one short of tying for the record. Now, the Golden Globes have already given the actor who played the trans person and who is a trans person in real life the Best Actress award, as they were obligated to do. And this was the acceptance speech from that actor at the Golden Globes.
The light always wins over darkness.
Okay.
And I have a lot of things to say to you because you can maybe put us in jail.
No one's going to do that.
Beat us up, but you never.
No one wants to do that.
Can take away our soul.
We don't want to.
Existence, our identity.
What are you talking about?
And I want to say to you, raise your voice, freedom, and say, I am who I am, not who you want. Thank you so much.
I don't want you to be anything. I don't know who you are. I have my own life. I know that's like revolutionary to you people in Hollywood, but yeah. We're actually fully formed human beings leading fully formed lives that have our own issues that don't orbit around you. You're living in a delusion where you think people want to put you in jail, which no one has proposed. No one in the country has said that they want to put trans people in jail. You're saying that we want to come beat you up. I know of no one who has said that on either side of the aisle. I know of no one who wants to beat trans people up. I'm against someone mistreating a trans person. Now, I'm sure there are people out there who would do that, but by the stats, if you remove domestic violence and you remove drug-related, prostitution-related acts of violence, where a drug deal goes bad or a prostitution deal goes bad, which is dangerous for anyone. I mean, whether you're trans, whether you're not trans, whatever, you are around drug dealers, the odds increase of something bad happening to you. If you are a prostitute, the odds increase of something bad happening to you. But if you take those off the table, trans people are actually the safest category of people in the entire country. There is actually less acts of violence committed against them than any other group. So no, there is not some massive group of people who want to beat you up. And if anybody in the small, almost non-existent minority does, that's what the justice system is there for. You say we want to take away your soul, which is not true and not possible. You say we want to take away your identity, which is also not true and, again, not possible. So everything you said in that speech is a complete delusion made up in your mind. So I would encourage you to maybe speak to your doctor about whatever medications you are on that might be contributing to your being detached from reality. That way, whatever adjustments need to be made can be made. And hopefully it is the medications and is something that they can correct in order to help you not need to be afraid of things that aren't happening. So, Hollywood, like CNN, can continue to go bankrupt. I don't care. There's, frankly, much more interesting things going on in the world and much more interesting films coming out of independent production companies. So, you are welcome to choose whatever path you want to choose, my people. But you no longer have an administration in power that is going to force the rest of us to go with you. That's what freedom is, baby. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and follow because that helps these things become successful. And I hope you come back next week. Please have a good week, my friends.